Yeah.
Hey everyone, what you've just watched is a POV of my favorite coaster at my local theme park. I spent about a week working on this thing, and it's been ever since the Raptor track came out. I knew immediately that I needed to make a stunt pilot recreation when I heard that the RMC Raptor was coming to Planet Coaster 2, and so that's what you're seeing here. There's arguably not as much detail as I usually like to put into my builds, but that is a consequence of working with realism over making something artistic. And for what it's worth, there's quite a lot of detail in realism. I did have to make some concessions for what it's worth, but for the most part, I'm really happy with how this turned out. Be on the lookout for others in the community that are making a layout that is a little smoother than mine is. I'm really excited to see how close they come in Planet Coaster. Let me show you some behind the scenes. Here we are in the park. It is Frequency Falls. This is a defunct collaborative project between two different users. One of them was Johann. There was some terraforming done. There's a little lake up here, some nice little pieces of scenery going all the way through. That's not the feature. I basically wanted to use one of these starter maps as a placement option for this guy, the completed stunt pilot, and I can scroll around it and show you everything that's going on. Some of these supports are a little wider than they should be, and that is just a result of me working over the top of a map and having to change some stuff. What were the things that I needed most to change compared to the version that you would see and ride in real life? The biggest change, I think, ends up being the brake run, because it needs to be much taller for it to actually reach where I need it to go. So what I ended up doing is, instead of extending the brake run, I just lifted it up, and it now goes over the top of basically the cage that the guests stand in. This also meant that I had to raise the switch track, and I gave a foundation for the switch track in the maintenance bay. Because of how this technically works in real life too, I needed a road leading up to it, so it ended up being a concrete ramp just for any service vehicles like a semi-trailer to get in there. You probably still need a crane to reach in and grab the objects and then move them onto the truck bed, but that's neither here nor there. I just wanted something that looked functional off the back, and this kind of reflects what you see in real life to a certain degree. Additionally, this building here is a little too wide, but that's okay. Here on the inside, it's really just to house this power distributor, which provides power to it without looking super ugly. But with any of these facilities of any utility type, they have this ugly little light that shows up over the top of it. That's just for accessibility, so that when people are playing the game, they have this little light showing whenever they're building in parks and they don't want to dress that kind of stuff up. The fact that I have means that I still see that, but that's perfectly fine. Another thing is that the station is massive. This is just a consequence of Planet Coaster not having unique options for stations and the like. In the real thing, you actually enter from this particular wall going straight on, and you wrap around the station. Like, the station actually has a line queue leading all the way to this back car. And it has continuous loading, so guests will get in on it as other guests are getting off. So one would get off here, right at the exit, and then the next would get on. Very quickly, they'd hand their belongings over to several staff members, which would then load up the cubbies. I do have a story based on loose articles on this ride, but maybe I'll save it for a different video. I think the primary difference you'll notice here is the catwalk is not in fact red. And the only way for this to actually be the case is for me to color the track red, which is kind of a stupid oversight in my opinion with this particular model. And I think that just comes down to the fact that there are limitations on how many color swatches you can have in the game. This was already based on the original system for colors, and so if I were to do a realistically colored catwalk, I'd need to get in here with a whole bunch of custom objects. That would just inflate the piece count unnecessarily, so a white catwalk will do, at the very least. Once this video is up, and you're watching it now, you can place this in your own park. I look forward to seeing where you guys put it. If you're in any Discords with me, and you have the perfect idea for where this kind of blueprint could go, please, at me with what it ends up looking like. I'm very excited to see how this gets used in a realism sense. This was the first real time that I tried a lift motor too. I just used some of the gears, scaled them down to 50%, and then used some of the photos that I personally took when I was at Silverwood recently. Did the best I could. I think I came up with something that's kind of cool. I personally would love to have better sound effects for this lift motor, but the in-game sound effects for Planet Coaster were never really that strong, so something that just reminds you that there's a lift motor there is good enough for me. You may have noticed from the intro cinematic that there is something very familiar going on right here. Let me show you real quick what this happens to be a part of. So I previously built this thing, having this just cute little prop out in front of the biplane that's on a rotating platform. Feels so good to me. And I spent like a good hour or two perfecting this little thing. It's not the best designed thing ever. In fact, like if I pause the game, you can see I've got the fighter jet attachment right there. And it's not very clean, but like it's good enough for a prop, and guests aren't really going to be using this. So I just think it's really fun set dressing for this type of thing. And so what I did is I just recolored all that, and I think it sells the idea pretty well. The real thing is more descriptive and has more going on with it, but really, I just wanted another reason to put this thing down. If the supports look like a mess in certain spots, it's not necessarily because they're improperly placed. I did my best to be as accurate as possible, so everything that looks like it's kind of off in this specific position actually does have a reason for that. So this really awkward support that juts out towards the lift hill is like beyond strange to look at in real life. You just have to wonder, like, how is that thing even supported? If you think about it a little bit, where is all of the pressure on this particular part of the lift hill going? Well, it's against this angle. And so having these couple pieces jut out from the main support structure, which is honestly iconic, is just kind of a fun nod to how wild it looks in real life too. Now, the coaster currently is running specific operations. It gets a pretty lackluster score. It can be compared with the real thing, and I'll show that towards the end of the video too, where the speeds are almost exactly the same throughout the entire thing. I will tweak it before I put it on the workshop so that it performs a little better and your guests will like it more. But if you want the option to have the realistic version of this thing placed down, here are what you need to look at. The friction value has been upped to 1.3. This is on purpose. The train runs super fast at a baseline, so increasing the friction actually makes everything feel like it's a little bit more weighted. The operations for whenever a mechanic needs to get in here and fix whatever's going on is not necessarily the best placed, but it is kept where it is for realism's sake. Additionally, the lift hill is a little slow, and the real thing starts slow and then goes pretty quick all the way up the lift hill, or at least it feels that way in real life. In Planet Coaster, you can get this thing going really, really fast. So I'll probably tweak it somewhat, and then I'll get the excitement rating up higher, and also maybe some of the prestige rating as well. The forces that are generated in-game are tolerable to guests usually, and so you can get away with way more than you think you can. Like, if you were to experience this thing in real life, it's already crazy in the back car, or the back couple of cars. I've experienced this myself. You just get thrown around a lot. And if you take the train through some of these elements way faster, it becomes way more intense of an experience. So those are just some things to keep in mind. Specifically, the barn was very interesting to build because these are the veranda roof tiles, and they do not have a very favorable place to put this gizmo tool, so it was a lot of finagling to get it right. Don't look at it too closely. But this is definitely the highlight of the ride for a lot of people in real life, where the camera is also placed. And it also just so happens to be at a part of the ride that's pretty exciting, so a shame that I can't get cars 5 through 8 and then 9 and 10 on these monitors, but I did the best I could. This kind of thing looks pretty similar to in real life, but shelves that I decided to add but didn't want guest functionality have a little counter hidden underneath. It's my favorite trick. I've done this on multiple of my builds by now. Most notably is the merchandise cart for Main Street, but that populates these counters with stuff that you don't really have to think about. I mean, is it accessible? Yes, absolutely. The guests don't necessarily need to walk into the counters in order to get to them, so I'm perfectly happy with all of that. Fire extinguisher cameo. I have a growing collection of photos of places that I would not expect to see a fire extinguisher, but now that I have built one in-game, I'm noticing them everywhere. Maybe that's just like a recency bias sort of thing, or familiarity bias. I have a couple of very detailed signs out the front too, including the main stunt pilot sign. I really just made this out of text and had to mess around with specifically how the text was placed, so please be proud of me. It took a long time. This isn't strictly the same as the stunt pilot recreation is, but in order to get the text so small, it would actually need to go in like this kind of square and have like 5 times as much text. It is pretty insane how much they fit on a small square that you can barely read in real life. Porting this over from Ace and adjusting it slightly for the accurate intensity and giving it a proper wait time too just generally helps everything smooth out a little bit and feel much more readable in Planet Coaster than it would be if I had just tried to get a whole bunch of squiggles on the side of the wall there, and it wouldn't read well from far away either, so I just have to make a couple concessions here and there. I've also got the drink cooler back. If you're in here and you want to open it, you actually can. It's really cute. If you want to see what's going on inside, what I did for some of these drink props, then be my guest. This is also something that you will find on the Spanish colonial Surf's drink bar, and I had a lot of fun making it. I made it specifically for that scenario, but I've used it ever since. Very happy with it. This is also the first time I've ever used ventilation pipes for trash cans. And you can't reskin this middle part, but I don't think you need to. It looks very modern and sleek. Fits right in with the aesthetic. All that's left to show is the nighttime look. And I got photos when I was at Silverwood recently of this ride at night. And it has a whole bunch of these cute little modern spotlights on the ground that are constantly shifting color. And I wanted to emulate that with this project. So what I ended up doing is I took a sequencer and paired them up, and then I just copy-pasted a whole bunch of them. In reality, there's a whole bunch more lined up together, and they also shine much farther than they do in-game, which is honestly the one weird case where the modern spotlight doesn't actually shine as far as I want it to go, but that's neither here nor there. I am very happy with how this looks. It gives you something to look at when you're panning over your park. The gift shop feels pretty well lit. I'm happy with that. And also this entryway feels very, like, kind of realistically ominous in a way that I feel like it isn't captured very well by in-game lighting, so I'm very happy with that. The one thing I will say that I'm not necessarily as happy with is the station lighting, because in here, all of these resort lights that I have hooked up to everything, they only show light directly underneath them, and despite this being the exact setup in real life, there's so much more light bleed going on, and it makes the whole station feel much more warm in real life than you would see in here. But this is the best I could do with what I was given, and I think it's still serviceable enough. That's all here, and I think that's it for this little showcase. I'm very happy to have this particular project done. I've never been this excited to work on a new feature that the Frontier developers put together for all of us in Planet Coaster 2. The implementation of this particular ride was very fun to work on. Now that we have the standard Raptor clone layout done and accurate in-game, at least to some level. There's going to be plenty more out there pretty soon that are going to be quite similar to this and have much better profiling, don't get me wrong. It's nice to have one that's actually dressed up that you can put in your parks, especially your parks that are focused on realistic decoration. With all of that said, I think that's going to be it for my coverage on Stunt Pilot, and I'm going to leave you with one more little treat before I go. This is the comparison video of the real thing to my final recording of getting all of the stats exactly where I wanted it to be. So this is when the friction value was changed, and the lift hill speed was also changed. Thank you very much for watching. As always, have a good one. That's an order. Follow a good soldier.